Welcome to our podcast, From Stardust to Us, in-depth conversations with thought leaders, artists, and spiritual activists navigating the challenges of our times with integrity, joy, and purpose. I'm Linnell Hayden, an advocate for animals and the natural world, a world traveler fascinated by other cultures and spiritual traditions, and these passions have deeply inspired both my life and my work.
I'm Bernice Marie Daly. I'm a contemplative activist and a spiritual guide across wisdom traditions.
We are excited to welcome Laura Lee, the Vice President and Director of Research and Outreach at the Cuyamungue Institute, a nonprofit educational research organization. Laura Lee is a teacher, speaker, author, and media host dedicated to exploring and sharing the transformative practice of ecstatic trance and ritual postures. Alongside her husband, Paul Robert, Laura Lee co-directs the Institute, continuing the pioneering work of the late anthropologist Felicitas D. Goodman, bringing this ancient practice to a modern audience. So we welcome Laura Lee to our show.
Thank you, Linnell and Bernice. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Laura, we generally start with the origin story of how our guest has come into their work. But I wanted to start with a more foundational question. Until I started researching for our time here together, myself, I had never heard of the ecstatic trance and ritual posture. And I'm finding it really fascinating and illuminating. And I'm just wondering if for our audience, who also probably many of them have not heard of that, if you could just kind of give us an overview of the benefits, what is it, and what might the benefits be for modern day practitioners?
Well, what is ritual body postures? It is an ancient practice that there is evidence for going back to the Paleolithic, to the Ice Age. This is about using postures that are depicted in ancient artwork worldwide. I say Ice Age because one of the oldest artifacts we use that inspires a posture is 40,000 years old from the caves of France and Germany. And so this is a practice that is part of our human capacity, that it looks like indigenous cultures, and we were once indigenous, we Westerners, had practiced and used many, many methods to get back to an altered state. A lot of plant medicine used historically, but also many techniques without any medicine. That's because our neural pathways can be activated endogenously by our own inbuilt capacities. We have we wouldn't be given them by nature if it wasn't also the gift of activation within. And so for us, this is an age-old worldwide practice that is normal, inbuilt, part of our DNA, a gift of our own inner technology, all issued at birth. And a key word would be all issued at birth, something everyone has. That's what's exciting to this for me, is that we're all equipped equally. It is equal opportunity, chance to have an expanded state of awareness. What is the benefit? We say that we enter into a, quote, waking dream. There's evidence in the lab. We just recently participated in an EEG study at the Cognitive Neuroscience Lab at the University of Missouri by the behest of the anthropologist, Todd and Christine Van Poel. There's evidence, even going back into Dr. Goodman's time, that there is a natural physiological shift prompted by a mere ritual. You can see our ritual space behind us. A sacred space is all you need, and the intent for good things to happen. A ritual just calling in this magnificent universe that we acknowledge. Standing in one of these simple postures. The one we use today was like this, so simple. And we use over 100 from artwork all over the world, Neolithic, Paleolithic, and beyond. And that you're drumming, fast monotone beat of a drum or a gourd rattle. And your body responds to this, your physiology. And then a visionary experience ensues. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I just wanted to, I'm getting very excited here. I just saw your YouTube interview regarding the mystery schools, and it dawned on me while watching that. This has kind of been a mini epiphany for me. I was telling Bernice earlier where we all know the lotus posture, very famous to sit there and meditate, but I had never equated when I meditate, it feels emotional. I feel it in my heart or my crown chakra. And when I walk through my day connected, to everything being sacred. So that's mental and emotional. But watching your videos, and particularly the one on the mystery school, knowledge that has been lost that used to be universal, but now it's kind of sequestered away, secret. I hadn't thought of spirituality, and I don't know why, as being something physical, like our internal machinery or technology, as you put it. So I just found that really fascinating. And I just kind of feel like an onion peel has been peeled away, and, I've learned something here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we call
And
this an embodied spiritual practice because
yeah.
there's so much body wisdom. And for me, it was a revelation because I lived in my head. My
Mm,
intellect was a very comfortable place to be, but it was then anchored in the body and the body knowing itself and
mm.
also opening up to this. If you ever doubted that you have an energy body, do one of these practices and it comes alive. And you see that we are so multidimensional.
Yeah.
Can you recall an experience either you have had or someone who has been in one of your groups that was really impactful for them, and how maybe over time it made a difference in their lives or opened up some new awareness on a practical, like where the rubber hits the road kind of thing. So I'm experiencing this, and I have gone to your programs, as you know,
Thank you.
and it is wonderful. But the person who's listening to this today, maybe have never done anything like this, and maybe they thought their spiritual path was, saying certain prayers or attending certain, services and such. This is very different from that, and it can seem a little bit strange. So, how could you encourage someone? And can you kind of give us an example or
Oh,
something you
indeed, we
recall
have
that
we
was
have thousands
easy,
of
easy, huh?
examples. Yeah. And what we say is that we are transmitters and receivers in this vast cosmos. And this is about receiving a vision. There are beautiful practices where you're projecting and you're using your imagination or you're visualizing, or there's more of a prescription. Our prescription is just to get into this state where our physiology makes the shift and we open up, and then you're receiving a vision and you don't know what it is. So it's like opening a gift box with every ritual posture session. And I'll quote two briefly because I know we have a lot to cover here. But a good friend of mine, for one of her first experiences, says this: I am flying. I look around me, I'm flying. It's an ecstatic, beautiful experience. I look around, I'm with a flock of geese. We're all flying. They turn around to me and they welcome me to the flock. And then I find myself, she says, in a forest clearing, and I'm surrounded by trees, and out of the trees come one wolf after the other. And they sit around me in a semicircle, and then they welcome me to the pack. And then I'm in a dimly lit cave, and a snake comes crawling out and coils around me. Then another, then another. At first, I'm frightened, but these are friendly snakes, and they welcome me. And then I'm in the night sky. The stars are glittering all around me, and they welcome me. And I have never felt so comfortable in my skin, she says, and she's tearing up. And I realize I am part of the fabric of the universe, and I finally am at home. And I'm like, oh, Barbara, this, I'm, you've got the upper world, the middle world, the lower world, the cosmos itself welcoming you. That is quite the introduction to this work. It adjusted her to now feel welcome in her own skin as she'd never had before.
Yeah, it sounds
And
like
so
she
that
really
is a
tapped
typical
into that divine
experience.
consciousness.
Yeah, seated
Yeah.
into comfort and solace. One of my most profound experiences was when my father died. I was so close to my dad, and I felt like I was crushed at the bottom of the ocean. I couldn't breathe. The grief, I hadn't realized what physical reaction and holding of grief that we could have. And
Mm.
yes, we have so many different postures and artifacts that we can have different experiences from. But this one was just a few weeks later. A friend came by and she goes, "Oh, we'd love to do a posture with you. And can we do this?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, you're all the way from England. Yes, come, let's do this." And I wasn't anything that had anything to do with this kind of experiences. These experiences will happen when they're meant to happen, when you choose to open up to them and you say, "Take me where you will,
Mm.
ancestors, spirits, divine universe, whatever." Here's what happened. I find myself in deep underground, and I walk over to a cage, and there was my father, my deceased father, standing in a cage. There was embers burning below him, and he was trapped. And I walk over to him, and I don't know how I know this. You just know how to navigate this alternate reality. And he was my dad was a very dapper dresser. He had a bigger wardrobe than my mother. He was always turned out beautifully. He was a New Yorker. And he's wearing all these old layers of old clothes. I'm like, "Dad," and I reached in and I took a layer of old coat from him and I dropped it through the grate where it burned up. There was another layer, and I kept taking layers and layers of old rags off of him. And then, and I had come to this moment of my father where we shared so much love, but I still had regrets. I hadn't come to this event of the family. I hadn't done this. I hadn't told him this. I thought that, all those regrets. And I was filled with regrets. And then after he became this light shining being, I saw I was also dressed in all these old rags. And I realized I was carrying the burden of all these regrets, of all my missed moments with him. He reached through and took rag after rag off of me. We became two shining beings, and we had so much communion, soul to soul,
Mm.
of so much love. And and then I was healed. I had no
Mm.
more regrets. I knew that
Mm.
we had touched the souls and exchanged our last moments of love. Thank you for being my father.
Wonderful.
You know,
Mm.
Wonderful.
and I
Wow.
was able to rejoin the land of the living.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Sounds
These things
very,
just happen. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds very healing and personal and indigenous, really. And I'm
And
wondering if,
spontaneous. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like, the stories you hear, mainly Native Americans or, they go through their spirit walks and walk into the spirit world for wisdom and healing and to visit ancestors. And um, I had never thought of that we were also indigenous, and you had brought that up. That's something that I've been sort of reading about and researching, and it's really opened my eyes and made me realize, how separated we have become in the Western world to our indigenous roots and our sacred spiritual, ancestry. And I'm wondering if you might, if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, yes. We're about to go address the Anthropology of Consciousness conference coming up. And one of the things that I like to tell groups of anthropologists are, this is not neo shamanism that we're doing. This is part of our human story. This is our birthright. This is a legacy that has been practiced by humankind from time immemorial. And just because we in the West have set these practices aside, this is a revival of something that is so vital to our human story and our soul, and that we can pick up the threads of our ancestors and these legacies. And it's our duty to continue these, because look at us in the West. We have lost our way. We have lost a piece of our humanness. We have set it aside in the name of progress. And the further astray we go, the more that these practices call us home. And we need to go home. This is a moment to realize who we are in the grand scheme of things. And humankind in just daily life, we go astray. And these practices have been about reclaiming who we truly are, about
Mhm.
writing our path individually amongst ourselves, within our community, and with the universe at large.
Mhm.
And we need to be reminded of who we are in the grand scheme of things.
Mm.
So
This
this is
was
what these
reminding me
practices
a
are
little.
about.
This was reminding me a little bit of shamanism, which was going to be one of my questions. You know, how is this related to shamanism? But you're saying it's a connection, but that's
There's a
not the
connection.
whole
Oh,
picture.
indeed.
Right. And also was when we spoke a little bit about yoga before, Linnell mentioned yoga. I was also, when you were telling your story, we have snakes and other things happening in that story that Barbara experienced. Um, Now I'm thinking of archetypes and symbology and stuff like that. Um, is there, if I were to attend one of your programs, there is a way for 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 get some help in how to process this? I mean, if I have lots of experience, then okay. But if this is a new thing for me, um, what do I do with all this? And it can be a little overwhelming, maybe a bit scary. And I don't like know if I want snakes hanging around. Uh, how, how does it become a learning and an opening? How do you help us do that?
Wow. Okay. First of all, snakes, think about the Chinese dragon, a symbol of vitality. Think about the fact that energy does this, serpents do this. It's really the Western mind that has taken the serpent and made it a symbol of Adam and Eve and all that. So snakes have often been honored. And so we become part of the web of life. We become equal members of the web of life. And we rejoin and we look at nature and we say, all of it is sacred. All of it is beautiful. All of it has its role and its purpose. And we're here to live in harmony. We are not isolated islands. It's not all about humanity here. This is a vibrant, I mean, nature is so much more powerful than us. We're a piece of that. We're part of the animal kingdom, for heaven's sakes. And about shamanism, there are cultures in which, quote, shamans, religious specialists, have taken the duty of being the guide and going into these realms and then performing the healing rituals on behalf of members of the community. We don't have shamans in our Western society. And so I appreciate those shamans who do their work and are educated and guided and become shamans. But what we find is that maybe this is proto shamanism. This is the equal access opportunity that all of us have to these realms. All of us have this physiological capacity to do that. And that is what Goodman also said. We're all equally have these. And here's what she would say. She said, early in the human story, dial it back millennia upon millennia. And we were all indigenous. We all were hunter gatherers. We all lived in these small
Sure,
tribes. And
sure.
that it was only through the advent of the end of the Ice Age when we could start cultivating plants and growing fields and crops that supported these larger communities that we had the king, the political leader, we had the priest, the spiritual leader, we had the military to protect the crop growing, we had the builders creating houses and storerooms, we had the artisans, the bakers, the all of that. So we became specialized, and it was the priests who now started to say, "Oh, you can only get to this through me." Or through this one
Mhm.
practice. So then we became constrained, and that was cut off from us. And she felt that's where each of us then, in this power shift, perhaps began to lose our way. But that's also where these kinds of practices became part of our ritual to find our way home again, to open up this avenue again. So we find a lot of postures even in the Egyptian culture, Crete, a very beautiful culture, the Mayan, all South America. They were trying to find their way home, she felt.
So, my question that I have for you now is there's a lot of younger generations leaving organized religion
Oh,
and the
yeah.
church. And I'm wondering what sort of response you might be getting from younger people with regards to your work. Are they excited about it? Does it seem more natural for them? Or are they kind of like, oh, this is, voodoo stuff?
There's a very big mixed response. And the voodoo stuff, our culture has put a lot of barriers up between us and direct access of this sphere. You could call it the divine, the sphere, this larger universe, a conscious universe, all of that. They've made it verboten. Why?
Mhm.
Is it because having direct access gives us so much self-empowerment and a sense of beauty and grace. And we become versed again in what we call the language of spirit. You talked about mythology earlier, Bernice, and what we
Mhm.
find is that the symbol, we have people gather from all over the country. We do a lot of our work on Zoom, all over the world, in fact. And so people that aren't necessarily versed in folklore or mythology or archetypes or
Right,
symbology, art
right,
history, archaeology, just regular folks. And the
right.
experiences that they have are mythic, are mythopoetic, are symbolic. It's like you are living in the story that is now being told to you. You are a living entity, and it's a three-dimensional story where your inner senses are activated, senses you know that you have, senses you didn't know you have. It's a living story. It's a living book that we're walking through, and stories
Mhm.
are told to us. Animal
Mhm.
spirits come, ancestors come, energy, Mother Earth, Gaia, the cosmos comes, and they tell you and bring you into the story. It is a living mythology. And so the very same archetypes, the world tree shows up again and again. We become the tree. Our branches are there in the cosmos. Our trunk is here. Our roots are deep into Mother Earth. We become these symbols. We become one with an animal spirit. We feel and see through the birds of an eye, like we're flying over and we look down. We see these perspectives. We merge with these. We live
Mhm.
their stories. So we speak the language of spirit. This is where we believe folklore, mythology, symbols, these archetypes come from. We are tapping into that same source. Many ways to tap into it. This is just one that we have been revivified for us. And about joining our ancestral roots, I believe that what Goodman gave us through her studies, through her recreation of a ritual that she drew from the ancestors and the clues in the archaeology, was that here we are, Westerners, and now we have a legitimate path of reclaiming that ancestral mindset and ways, access to the eternal now, as they
Mhm.
themselves enjoyed, without stepping on any one culture's toes. Because what
Mhm.
she did was she looked at the world's rituals and she said, oh, here's all the steps that they had in common. So I don't have to go and look to one culture or another. What they all had in common is our very simple pattern, very simple sets of rituals that are universal. We can all claim our way home.
Right.
It's almost like we're rediscovering a lost sense, like sight or hearing or sound, our spiritual sense.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have said that about voodoo. Now I'm feeling very bad because I know that that's a practice that a lot of people, turn to.
And
So,
again has been demonized, right? Made,
yeah, yeah. See how automatic that was for me here to just,
but it's very sacred for those
just
practitioners.
dismiss it like that. Okay, I'm sure Bernice has a question.
Well, this great explanation of this inner resource
Yeah.
has a, a very strong historical, cultural, unifying, psychic, spiritual, all that. And we're all increasingly aware that we are at this time, we humans in particular, but actually the whole planet is in some kind of major transition. And we are verging into dealing with this, what I refer to as the meta crises of our time,
Yeah.
which is, you know, pretty dangerous stuff depending on how it all comes to
Shakes out.
pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the coming of a new story, a new kind of cosmic story that's beyond the definition or beyond the confines of a particular specific religious or spiritual orientation. Not that those are not important, but that we're looking for some kind of a global thing that everybody can connect to, which is what I'm hearing you talk about, this resource. So, in light of so much of the anxiety and fear and grief that I have been hearing and having conversations with people more and more recently, sort of, what shall I say, it's almost like it's becoming cumulative or sort of bubbling up more and more.
Yeah.
Um, how can you connect the dots for us around what you've been experiencing? And is this a resource, if you will, or whatever word you might want to use for it, in helping us deal with the meta crisis that is increasingly in our face, and even more so for our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, who are going to be dealing with a great deal of catastrophe and transition before we get to something new, hopefully. So, whatever you'd like
Well,
to share about all of that.
I happen to know, because we've interviewed you, Bernice, is that you're very much involved in the work of the goddess and the
Yeah.
return of the goddess, and which is, in fact, women's power and what women have to offer, which is
Mm-hmm.
about balancing the slate so that we have all jets firing, which we're going to need to navigate this road ahead. And I want to say that you might find this of interest. We have lots of artifacts depicting the goddess around the world. Here's what's interesting. When we select a artifact and then we look at the posture that it's depicting, and then we say, hey, everybody, we're going to do this ritual. We're going to show you the posture. We don't show the artifact until the very end
Uh,
because we don't want to lead the experience. We don't want the intellect involved. Oh, if I see this, I should have this. It's about
mm-mm.
receiving, so neutral ground.
All right.
When we do a goddess posture, we have the most extraordinary visitations, I would call them, of a goddess.
Mhm.
Here's one that was actually shared by an artist friend of mine who's now busy depicting this in her headdress and clothing to do a dance. Here's where a goddess stood behind us, and she's white and glowing and maternal and loving. She's the mother you've always wanted. She's embracing you. Your whole chest is filling up with universal love. You're feeling, and she puts her hands like this over her forehead. So, yeah. And then you're infused with this sense of compassion and generosity and nurturing and this flow of energy. You're equipped to now face your daily life with this infusion of divine feminine power, energy, sight. So we become an avenue for the forces of nature to work through us. And I think that part of it for me to be a change maker, you are called forth. The universe calls you forth to be bigger than you are, to be more than you are, to have a grander vision of what your duty here on earth is.
Mhm.
And it also equips you with the force. You know, it's like the Jedi Knights, right? You tap into the force, you become one with it. And you find that it's not about me, it's about the we. It's about how do I step up and do what I'm called to do. I don't think the universe assigns us to tasks that we're not actually able to fulfill. And then we have to drop the, oh, poor me, this is my limitation. You step up, you wear a mask, you wear a mantle, you're equipped. I just came out of a ritual body posture session. And it's like the universe calls us forth in ways that we don't even know. We just follow the cues. And so we had one of our members. The reason, even the process of choosing a posture to do for the day becomes
Sure,
a divine intervention in a
sure,
sense. We had
sure.
a member who had injured her upper arm, fractured upper arm. And so we said, okay, Julie, we're going to do a posture today that's going to be close. We're not going to ask you to do this. We're not going to ask you to do that. We're going to, something comfortable for you can show up. And another member, so we chose one that was like this. And there's a whole story behind it. Well, one of our members said, and we didn't know this. She goes, today is St. Bridget's Day. She follows this mythology. And she said, Saint Bridget wears a mantle. I was here like this, and they put a mantle of green over my shoulders. I was wearing a mantle. And then I knew that I had to lay it on the ground. I had to lay it on the ground over and over. And she said, it was only when I'm writing in my journal that I realized
Mm.
that was what St. Bridget's whole story was, is that she was told she could own and nurture the lands where she could place her mantle. But instead of just placing a mantle before her, it became the cosmic mantle. And she spread it over the lands that she was to nurture and to claim for the goddess and for her people and to put into right relation. And she said, I realized that my job now is to spread my seed, to spread my wisdom, to spread my mantle, my influence. And she just signed up for one of our workshops where to teach this. And we're like, oh,
Mhm.
yes, you were being called, are you not? You just had a visitation from St. Bridget. Hallelujah. You know. And so these things happen before we understand the full meaning of them. It's only because when you're in this state, you just experience. We say, put your bark your doubting mind, your intellect off to the side. It claims you all your waking hours. This is a chance to let that other part of you step forth and speak the language of spirit and to
Mm.
receive this vision. So
Mhm.
when you're in this state of mind, if you're in your intellect, you have a very shallow experience. If you can let that go, you dive deep into this. That takes
Mm.
over momentarily. And then
Mm.
then you piece it together at the end when we're all sharing our experiences.
I see.
These
Very
vast
good.
revelations come forth.
Yeah,
And so
it's so important for us to open to the divine wisdom that's out there, and so many of us live solely from our ego, right? Which is based in fear a lot of times, and survival and separateness from the sacred. But it seems to me in this time, not only do we need more goddess energy, but we need a healing of the masculine spirituality and spirit as well. We need that as well. And I'm wondering, so that it's a protective, energy as opposed to domination. And, I'm wondering what sort of experiences or feedback you're getting from the men who are in this group and practicing these ritualistic postures.
well, and to be change makers, if we're downloading cosmic energy, our job is to send it forth, right? You need to be a nodule in the whole infrastructure of
Mm.
energy flow, and that's what keeps it flowing. And it's about for the all, the good of the all, for the sacred, right? About men. We have a lot of men who do this work, and even in goddess postures, they are finding that nurturing self, that balanced self. They love it. They love it. Like they say, I've come to know women if I've never heard them before. I've come to know better from the inside out, my mothers, my sisters, my daughters, right? It's so revelatory for them too. And in one sense, we talk a lot about that. We hear from men, and they're saying, we want to help bring the goddess forth, but we realize that the sacred masculine has to stand alongside the sacred feminine, that we need to support one another. The both are needed. We can't really, in a
Absolutely.
toxic patriarchy, it's hard for the goddess to come forth. So we need to stand tall as men with our divine duty, which is to support nature, children, the mother, the feminine. We need to support and help you stand up. That's the message that comes through a lot.
Yeah, being a spiritual warrior, if you think about the indigenous rites of passage for the young boys, and it's very masculine, but it's very
Traumatizing for them too.
it's traumatizing. Yes, but then they come through the other side and they are protectors. And
Yeah.
that's what they're called to do. I'm speaking from a woman's point of view, right?
Yeah.
We should probably be asking some men this question, but yeah, so this is all very fascinating. Bernice, did you? Looks like you have something you want.
So we'll have to have Paul come next time.
Yeah.
He can
Yes,
represent
he can
all.
speak
He
to
can,
that. He's had men's
right. He can
conclaves where they
represent
look at
all
the
men on the
sacred
world, and you can
masculine.
represent all women on the world. Not many, many voices. Obviously, many, many voices. And yes, we need a major. Is my belief. This is if I were to pick that nothing further is going to really advance until we deal with these masculine feminine energies that are very skewed to say the least. What I'm interested now, we're running out of time almost here, and I wanted to ask you, what you got cooking? You have any kind of, I don't know where you can fit it because you're doing all this stuff all the time, but are there new endeavors, new projects, new things you're working on that you could share with you can share with our listeners?
No, Goodman was an academic. And so there's a lot to be said about the academic aspects of this work. So we are reaching out to several and working with them to ask, what is this work in this modern day, in this modern expression of it? Because we're adding to the lineage, we're adding to this very long chain of this practice through time. And we moderns, how is it helping us? What is it doing for us? How are we also understanding who we are in the larger context, who we've been? And what is the world that we all want to create? What is it about? What is the eternal message? So that's one aspect. And what is consciousness? How does this work? How is it that we have shared experiences that we're not even in the same room? And we have shared themes that show up again and again and again. Is this spooky effect as a distance? Is this quantum entanglement? And so I'm having conversations with physicists that will actually say, yeah, it actually maybe is working in our everyday life as well, not just a theoretical or experiential experimental thing that we find. And so we're also looking at art history to try to catalog what are the cultures and what do they have to say and how does their myths relate to what we experience in the here and now. Because again and again and again, we again will do these sessions. Hey, just hold a posture like this. We show a photograph of Paul in the posture. So there's just as Goodman did. So there's no leading evidence of it. And yet we find like the posture that we did today. Okay, you have this giant bird, a thunderbird, with a little tiny man depicted on these artifacts. The man is holding, guess what he's holding? Sometimes a mantle in our experience, but in the artifact, it's holding the legs of a bird. What did people see? They saw a falcon, an owl, a hawk. They looked into golden eyes of a bird face to face. We did not give you a clue to that. You saw it in the end. And so there's a big art history aspect to this. We were once doing a posture of Bast from an Egyptian artifact, Bast being the cat god. There was a mummified cat in the center of it that they x-rayed in this. We don't say anything. We just say, oh, sit like this. People in the experiences, and we were seeing their cats in their living room on Zoom. Their cats were all over them, purring and walking in front of the cameras. And they were saying, my cat was, this is before we showed the art, my cat was, she had to go sit in the seat I was just sitting in. And now she's sitting there purring loudly and she won't leave me alone. The cats responded. And then they're like floored because we show Bast, who's the cat god of Egypt, and it has a mum. What did the cats know? How did the cats sense this? And so, I mean, all these interesting things. What are we? This is why we say spooky effect at a distance. What are we sensing here through the ethers that have been activated because we opened a portal through a ritual, and that we're inviting the ancestors to come in. We're inviting whatever this cosmic intelligence is. And so we're exploring on many grounds. We're trying to investigate. Yeah, I'm the director of research and outreach. What is going on here? And how does this relate? People who do Reiki and energy healing, they love this work. And they say, when I do Reiki, I feel heat. We feel heat. I see visions and colors. We do too. I get downloads. We do too. We have this amazing technology inside. Can we activate this and use it for the good of the planet, for helping to steer where we want to be, which is to treat everything as sacred, ourselves included, and all of our biosphere. This is a magical planet we live on. Can we re-enter the enchantment of the world? Can we live it as though it really means something and that we are broader, bigger, cosmic beings, just having a momentary existence with the duty to caretake, enjoy, and love? Can we
Yeah.
step up to that? I think this practice is a piece of one of many where we can
Right.
do. Who are we in the grand scheme of things? What
Well,
is
the
our
fact that these postures have been depicted in, artifacts and statues, little statues, and on cave walls and whatnot,
Thank you.
speaks to the importance to the human race of them. Because today we take writing for granted, don't we? We scribble things on paper, throw them in the trash, and we have our computers and whatnot. Back in the day, way back in the day,
Yeah.
writing was no
Yeah.
small feat. You had to, it took a while to etch something on a rock. So, yeah, this is fascinating.
We say that all
We could
that
go
writing
on
on the
and
cave
on.
wall where the
Yeah,
notes
we're
that
going to have
turned.
to have part 1, part 2, part 3.
Okay, I'm game.
We are kind of pushing against the boundary of our time here. I'm wondering if there is, we're going to ask you to maybe share a favorite quote before we actually close out, but
Oh, yes.
we want to know if you have a particular, way to contact you that you would like to tell our listeners about, a website, whatever. Why don't you share that with us? And is there something else, Lynelle, that you wanted to
A
say
website and a
before we do
quote.
this closing
Uh,
out?
yes, our Zoom sessions are open to any and all. Just show up with an open heart and 2 hours of time that you can set aside. Cuyamungue Go to the events page. You do need to sign in. That's just a security measure for us. And then there's no fee, there's no cost. Just come, and it posts every day that we do these on a regular basis, a couple of times a week. We also have many more programs, books, writings, and da, da, da. Now, about the quote. This is from Dr. Goodman, who we got to spend 10 years with her at the last 10 years of her life. And I'm so thankful for all of that. She was such a brilliant, groundbreaking scientist mystic. We are all ecstasy deprived. Why do we call this ecstatic? How did she mean the word? It's not the street drug ecstasy. Ecstatic in her context has two meanings. One is ecstasis, from the Greek, ecstasy, ecstasis, stepping outside your everyday norm into a larger field. And ecstatic meaning this sense of communion with the all, this sense that a peak experience in this work, as it is in other modalities, is a sense of being one with the universe, one with the all. Our boundaries dissolve and we become part of this living universe. We acknowledge that we are part of it. We feel that we are part and parcel of it. That's ecstasy. That's true communion. And this offers a sense of that to varying degrees and varying aspects. And so we are ecstasy deprived of the joy, of the sense of security, of belonging, of the solace of knowing we are welcome, we are loved, we are one, we belong. That's ecstasy. We are deprived of that. That's why we have so much mental illness and depression and suicide and disconnect. And that's why these egos can go out and try to, like a cancer cell. I'm threatened. I'm going to try to live. I'm going to harness these resources for myself. Rather than knowing that I am part of a body and I am nourished and I am there and to serve and to be one, and I'm in the neighborhood, I'm in the hood, and I'm happy and I'm comfortable. That to me is the difference.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Laura Lee of the Cuyamungue Institute, thank you so much for joining us and the beautiful work you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you
Pleasure
so
to be
much.
with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good to be with you all and the all.